Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone, and it's such a pleasure to have Joe here tonight. I think we connected way before, like, a little while before COVID really hit, and back then we kind of connected about a couple of bits, particularly around the community. And I mentioned that our club really has a focus on mental health. So it was good to kind of, I had the pleasure one day to jump onto LinkedIn and saw that Joe had written a book, and I think it's just an opportune time to really introduce Joe and see a little bit where his background is and kind of his thinking along this space.
Well, thank you, darling.
So Joe, he's got a considerable background within the leadership and internal coaching space. He's worked with Gallup Consulting across Singapore, Thailand, a fair bit of Asia, and then worked for Chandler McLeod, where he actually managed a team of 18 clinical psychologists. So he probably knows a thing or two about that space. Most recently, he's worked with Samsung Electronics in the kind of the cultural change and facilitation space. But now his big venture is True Perspective, really helping to enable people to improve their performance and take a bit more of a mental approach to kind of really getting balance in their life and things like that. So, Joe, with that, I'd love to kind of hand over the floor to yourself and talk us a little bit more about True Perspective.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pete. And thank you everyone for showing up at 6 p.m. on a Monday evening. It's great to have your attention, and also the privilege to be able to share some of my thinking and insights, and also have a conversation around some of the work that I've done and what I believe is really important work. So please, as we sort of progress and I share some of what's in my book and some of my insights, I'd love to hear your questions. And I know there's question time at the end, but I'm happy to go with it as you guys see fit. This is my first Rotary Club invitation, so I'm not sure exactly how they go, but we'll see how it goes. So look, I guess the book, True Perspective, Why Leading with the Truth Always Wins. So that's the topic. And I'd say the most common question I get is, when did you decide you wanted to write a book? And I can answer that question very clinically. So 5 years ago, when I first started my practice, and it coincided with leaving Chandler McLeod. And I'd have to say, I didn't enjoy being an executive leader. I have 4 children, and that keeps me busy enough. And when I was working at Chandler McLeod, it became too much. And the responsibility of managing 18 psychologists is about as difficult as you could imagine it would be. And the sort of mental trickery that goes along with that. But also having 4 kids and wanting to spend time with them, it really did create a bit of a crossroads in my life and my experience, where I decided that it wasn't for me, and I had to do something that held a bit more meaning, and it was a bit more powerful for me. So I didn't necessarily think it through deeply, if I be honest, other than I knew it wasn't right. And so something wasn't right, and I needed to be really honest with myself. So I took the plunge and I left Chandler McLeod to start my own coaching business. And that was the concept. I had one client that I'd lined up to do this consulting gig with, and that probably would have given me about $30,000 to sort of kick things off, and to sort of make me feel like, yes, this is enough. I've got this leverage behind me. And I went away for a long weekend with my boys, and just my boys. My wife and daughter stayed at home. We had a bit of a camping trip. It was more like glamping, but it was nice. And upon my return, I had this call scheduled in with this client to kick things off and start the work. And it was all very exciting. I was sitting there at my home office desk and had a coffee, and the phone rang, answered it. And the tone of my client's voice told me everything. She went, "Oh, it's not good news." It's like, "Oh, what's happened?" So, well, the CEO's been terminated. The directors have put a freeze on all spend that's discretionary, and unfortunately your program is discretionary. Therefore, give us a call in about 6 months and we'll see what we can do. Now, as you can imagine, probably wasn't the phone call and the conversation I wanted at that point in time. My heart sank, and all I could think was I'd made a mistake. I'd stuffed up. I left my job, which was a well-paid job and security, for what? And now I was staring down the barrel of being destitute and having to have that conversation with my wife and face up to my kids. And it was a very difficult time. So I actually sat back for a moment rather than go into frantic, have to find a job sort of mode, which, you know, I'd done a lot of outplacement coaching. So I'd seen what happens to people at that time in their life. I decided to put a giant, let's say, butcher's paper wall up on my office and start to map out what I really wanted to do. And was this really most important to me, that I run my own practice and run my own business? And indeed it was. And I talked about my values, my purpose, what was most important to me, what were some of my goals. And one of them just so happened to be to write a book, but within that book to share my story. And I felt like there was quite a lot in there that I wanted to get out there into the world. And so that was how I started that journey of wanting to write a book. And so it took me 5 years to actually get that done, but I didn't write in earnest until probably October last year was when I really started writing. And then, you know, the process with my editor and going backward and forward, got the book out there in probably February it was done. And then, you know, getting it published and put on Amazon and all that stuff was just part of the course and a bit of the process. So that's a bit of backstory in terms of how I got to you know, writing the book and pushing it out there and getting to a point where I want to share it. But I'd like to give you a glimpse of what some of those insights are in the book. And by all means, there's no pressure for you to buy it. I, of course, would love you to read my book, and I think that would be wonderful. But I think tonight you'll get a sense of what this book can offer you, and also some of the insights that may or may not be useful to you. So why don't I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone's in speaker view, so you can see my whole screen at this point in time, and that will just make sure you can see the full screen and what I'm about to share. But can everyone see that slide and read that okay? Yeah, excellent. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of thinking that goes on in a practice such as myself. And when I'm really thinking about true perspective, it's
don't we need screen share for this?
It's sure to be up on your device.
I'm just getting, I have the 9 people up, the pictures of everyone, and just small with a.
There should be something which says view, and you can change the view.
Yeah, if you click on speaker view, you should be able to see the full screen with my screen, and yeah.
Leave it with me.
No problem. But yeah, so when it comes to true perspective, I think one of the greatest gifts we can offer each other is to step back and see things for what they really are, and take that broader view and not necessarily get caught up in the insignificance of what we believe is most significant in that moment. So I'm talking about challenges. When something bad happens, that becomes our entire focus. But oftentimes, it's actually not that significant. So for example, we might have an accident, a car accident on the way to work. That will be incredibly significant, potentially even traumatic. But in the bigger scheme of things, even if it's just a small ding, no one got hurt, it didn't really matter. So perspective is a really powerful tool, and we've all got access to be able to take different perspective, a broader perspective, and shift that perspective in any point in time. And so I'd love to have an opportunity to shift your perspective tonight back to a time where you felt inspired. And so the question that I'd like to pose, and it really comes down to this question here on the screen. So what leader has had the most positive influence in your daily life? Now, when I say leader, it could be a manager, it could be a parent, it could even be a sibling, it could be somebody in your life that is fictitious, right? It could be a superhero character that has had a significant positive influence in your daily life. And I'd just like you to take a moment to imagine that person, right? And write 3 words that spring to mind that best describe that person. Right? If I think about somebody who's had a positive influence on my life, you know, I might think about my grandfather. And, you know, the words that come to mind for me are, he was incredibly responsible. He was incredibly generous. And he was also quite stern. Right? But he had it was fair stern. And so they're 3 words that encapsulate that positive influence that he had on my life. Has everyone got their 3 words, or even if it's mentally, they haven't captured it somewhere, but got their words?
Should we pop them into the chat, Joe?
Yeah, if you'd like to, that would be great.
Oh, I can't do that.
That's okay. Yeah, just hold them mentally, because what I'd like to do is share with you some research that was done. And so back in when they conducted this research, so a company I used to work for, Gallup, they actually asked that question of 10,000 managers and then analyzed that data. So there were 30,000 responses that they get to filter through and determine, well, what 3 words did people usually come up with when they described a leader? And this was research born out of the idea of what followers want from leaders. So forget what we try and tell leaders to be, but what do people want from leaders? Like, what's the answer to that question? And I'd like to leave you with that thought and come back to it at the end, and I'll provide you with what that research revealed, because it's quite powerful, and it's something you can take away and think about after this presentation and after tonight. And I guess where I'm going with this, and where I start the book actually, so earlier this year, unfortunately, or let's just say as it happens, I lost my father. So my father died this January. It was a long battle with bowel cancer, unfortunately. And so that was very raw for me when I was writing this book. And obviously perspective was something that gave me in terms of death and life and everything in between. And I always talk and have talked about legacy, and what is it to create a legacy that is powerful, but also something that you're proud of. So when you do come to that point in your life where you're ready to go, are you actually reflecting on that life that you've had and lived and created for others and being in service of others with a sense of pride? And so I created a framework or a model that I call the evolution of self. And so you might see it on the screen here. Down the bottom, if you can't see that, it's behavioral impact. And the question that I pose around that is, how are you impacting others, and what's their impact on you? Now, this could be positive, it could be negative, it could be somewhere in between, but it's something that we owe ourselves and others in order to be effective. And you can see how the model expands and grows. So behavioral impact is not good nor bad, but it's not enough to be able to create a legacy that is powerful. And so as you ladder up from behavioral impact to emotional needs and relationship boundaries, it's a building model of self-development, of adult development, if you will, where it culminates at what I call legacy creation. And the simple question is, how do you want to be remembered? Right? So I've asked you to think about a leader that's had a positive impact in your world and describe them in 3 words. That's your recall of that positive impact and how they're remembered to you. So it's quite powerful. And even if somebody doesn't necessarily engage with this idea of legacy, and they don't like the word legacy because it sounds a bit something or other. Really, we're creating a legacy whether we like it or not. How we show up, what we do in our day-to-day lives, how we behave with people, that is our legacy. And so it's not necessarily about creating wealth or having an estate or having a lot to leave behind, but it's the memory and the experience that people have of us that we need to curate and be really careful with. So that's the premise of true perspective, enabling you to really step into the person that you want to be in the world and how you want to be remembered.
Hey, Joe,
And I guess, yeah.
I have a question on that model. I see there's the orange, the yellow dotted line around starting leading there. Why is it that particular boundary rather than one of the other ones?
Yeah, great question. I love that. So you're referring to this one here.
Yeah.
So this is what I call the leadership threshold. And so everything that sits beneath the leadership threshold in the blue here depends on you actually managing. So relationship boundaries, it's managing your relationships and determining, well, am I willing to allow somebody to, ask me certain things or demand certain things of me, or am I going to put a boundary around that? So it's quite reactive. Same with emotional needs. Emotional needs is, yes, I need to participate in determining what is it that I need from somebody, but also, am I willing to provide what somebody else is asking of me in terms of their emotional need? The behavioral impact, of course, that's an answer to a question of how are they impacting me and how am I impacting them? So this is all transactional. When we want to start to get into transformational behavior, we step across that threshold, and now we're talking about choice. Right, so now I'm choosing. As a leader, I have a choice to do what I want with that information. Now, I can choose to be a victim, or I can choose to step into what it is that I want people to experience me as. And same, if somebody's having a negative impact on us and we're a leader, we're going to choose how we respond to that behavior. Right, so choice discovery is a really powerful transition point. And if you're not choosing, I'm going to say it, if you're not choosing, you're not leading. It's as simple as that. Whether you've got a title of leadership or not, right? You can lead without having anyone reporting to you, and you can react even when you've got 18 people reporting to you. And I know that because I was very much reacting in my leadership role. And then I took back my leadership by choosing to leave that organization, which I'm sure did me and the 18 people I was managing a benefit, because I wasn't in the right place. I wasn't being honest with myself. So yeah, great question. And it really is that, if we talk about Viktor Frankl for a moment and his book, which many of you have most likely read, Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about you can strip everything from somebody, everything, but the power of choice. That is the one thing you can't take away from anybody, regardless of the situation. And, if you haven't read that book, I strongly recommend that you do. It's a really powerful read. And, I finished it and instantly started reading it again. It had that much of an impact on me. It was so good. So yeah, that's the model that I'm talking to here. So, we get to choice discovery, but really what we're trying to achieve is this one, legacy creation, right at the top of that model. How do you want to be remembered? And this is the powerful question that I'm posing. Any questions with that at this stage? Or is that clear?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Good.
Tom, do you have a question there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that's a very interesting perspective of leadership is choice creation. I've never ever thought of it like that, but I mean it's so true. And once again, I think that's a really interesting perspective of leadership. Kudos.
Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And to that point, I'd say if if you can see it, and if you can grasp the perspective, then it's available to you. And so that's kudos to you, because it's saying then you're recognizing the choice that you have in your situation as a leader. And so that's where it's a reflection. So I appreciate that. So I want to change tack a little bit here and introduce what's on the screen. So, a little bit funny, a little bit strange, you might think. So this is actually a couple of photos of my father performing as a clown. So he was a professional clown. He was an entertainer. He was a busker, and actually achieved quite a bit of prominence. He was sponsored by the Victorian government for a Keep Australia Beautiful campaign, and got a lot of national press at the time. And so his legacy, right, when I was delivering his eulogy, his legacy was the impact that he had on people. He made people laugh. He entertained them. He created positive change in the world, which was, fantastic. And it's something that, the memories that I cherish of him. But also, there was a flip side. There was a flip side to his experience. This is him counting coins after he's delivered a clown show, and he probably had less than $50 to show for it. So it wasn't a lucrative business for him. It was a challenge. And many times as a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, I'd watch him go around the car boot markets or the streets performing and entertaining. And I wasn't ever allowed to be part of the show, but other kids were, right? Because they weren't the kid of the clown, and it would be a bit strange. I don't know what the thinking was around it. So I'd be sitting there observing him as a clown, interacting with other kids, and had this strange sort of glimpse into that world of the mask and how he interacted with the world. And then he'd tell me later how sad he noticed people were. And as a kid, I didn't quite understand it completely, but the perspective that gave me of seeing him perform and making people laugh, but his reflection on that was that people were sad. And he'd look at all of the people in the audience, specifically adults who would enjoy the show more than the kids because they got the jokes, and as it happens. But he'd say, yeah, people are just so sad, and it breaks my heart. And so here we have this paradox that a clown should have the happiest job on earth, but he was constantly plagued with this challenge and sadness in the world, which was really interesting. And it got me thinking about this idea of multiple selves. And when we turn up to work, because predominantly I work with corporate clients, and I'm an executive coach and leadership development expert. And so, as a manager, we do put on a mask, and we do entertain. We have to bring ourselves to work and be strong and capable and together. And I think there's this sense that we can't be our full self, and that full expression of who we are, all of who we are in everything that we do, gets stifled. And I often work with leaders, and they say, yeah, well, I can't say certain things to my team, because if I did, then that would go down terribly and they'd judge me. And I know what that feels like, not feeling like you can be honest with your team. But part of getting where you need to be as a leader is determining that which you're willing to share, that which you're comfortable but uncomfortable, right on the edge, to get to authenticity. And you might hear authentic leadership being thrown around a lot, and vulnerability and shame and Brené Brown's work, and it is powerful work. But when it comes to doing it, a lot of leaders just say, no, I can't be weak. I can't be weak in front of my team. I can't be vulnerable. What's that all about? Yeah, they're going to judge me. I'm not going to get the promotion. It's going to be career suicide. So the concept that I've really talked about in my book is to discover yourself, which everyone wants to do. But, we're constantly discovering who we are. That's part of life and experience. We need to disclose who we are. So self-discovery through self-disclosure. And interestingly, yes, Dad was a clown, and yes, that was part of his legacy. But even as his son and my sisters would claim the same sort of concept and idea, we didn't really know who he was. Right? He bottled a lot of that up, and he was quite sad and quite broken as a person and as a man. So it's really important to get to a place where you are able to share all of you, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when you think that's going to mean that people are going to judge you and not like you. And I'd say, you know what? Yes. And how can you possibly know? How can you possibly know what people are going to do with that information? And I certainly can vouch for that by sharing a lot of my story. And there's a lot that I've personally shared in here, that all of the advice that I received, that no, don't share that. That's a bit too much and that's too raw. I'd say none of it's come true in terms of the bad stuff that I thought might happen and how people might judge me. None of it's come true. And it's the same with having a difficult conversation. You know, in a work context, someone might say, oh, I can't have that conversation with my manager. They're definitely going to judge me, or that'll be career suicide. So how can you possibly know that? Oh, well, I just know because last time someone did that, they got fired or whatever it was. So this idea that we know, I'm saying, let go of that idea. It's not a useful belief. It's actually holding you back from all of the things that you know is possible. And it's actually dishonest. You're lying to yourself to prevent you from doing that which you most want, that which you most desire. So when you are right at the end of your journey, you can look back with pride, having pushed across those challenges and those fears, look back on your life and say, yep, I can honestly say I've lived and I've really pushed myself, and people are going to remember me for that I did all of those things. And it's endless. It keeps going. It keeps evolving. And that's the evolution of self. And
Judith,
taking
sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
Judith, did you have a question about that?
I do have a question about it.
Please.
Yes, because I see it as a difference between positive and negative thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think negatively, you won't achieve. If you think positively, you will. That's
Absolutely.
more philosophy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, manifestation, I know that's something at the moment that a lot of people are speaking about, and positive thinking. I mean, my dad used to talk a lot about positive thinking, and I think Mind Power was a book that he often referenced. And, you know, if you believe in something, then it will absolutely happen for you. And so I think, yeah, positive thinking is a big part of it. And that's let's say, if we use some research that's fairly recent, you know, a growth mindset, which is something that Carol Dweck talks about, and came about with this concept in children that believe that they can improve and get better, often outperform those that don't believe that they can improve, regardless of their level of intelligence. So there's a lot to be said for those that understand that if you do work at something and hold the belief that improvement is possible, then you will get better. And that, I think, goes for many different aspects. Yes, intellectual, yes, sporting capabilities, but also physical illness. You know, if I think about times where I've had something go wrong, like I had a terrible back injury just after I started my business, actually, which was horrible, and had to go to Malaysia and spent a month literally on my back after I got back. It was terrible. But everyone was like, oh, you may not recover from this. You know, it was a severe disc injury. It was sequestered. It was terrible. And they said, yeah, you probably won't be able to do karate and do your sport and all that stuff. And I said, no, I believe I'll make a full recovery. I said, well, you may, but, you know, don't hold on to that hope too much, because I'm just being realistic with you. And I have made a full recovery. Sure, I know that I've got to be careful, but it doesn't prevent me from doing anything. So yeah, being positive in all aspects of life is important. Thomas.
It seems, I'm just thinking out loud, Judith, that the difference between positive thinking and otherwise, isn't that really a matter of perspective? And isn't a main function, for example, of a psychologist, any person who is a coach, to help you really work on your perspective, not so much your thinking? And is there a difference between the two?
Was that a question for Joe or for Judith?
Is that a question? Was that a question to me
well,
or to Joe? Or was that just a comment as how you see it? I believe, and I have been a leader, and I believe very sincerely in positive thinking. And I've said to those people that I've been able to lead that I will listen to anything they have to ask of me or tell me or know from me, but I don't want to listen to negativity because it's self-defeating, in my opinion.
No, I think what I'm asking, Judith, is a little bit deeper than that. And that is all negative thinking really a matter of perspective? I mean, there comes a time as a leader when you have to say, maybe we need to adjust our goals here because we don't have the assets to be able to achieve them. Now that I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's negative thinking. I think
negative, it's positive.
Exactly.
A positive reaction. It's a realistic reaction, but it's not a negative reaction. It's an adjustment you've made to your positive, in my opinion.
Well, and perhaps the next slide will or topic that I'm going to introduce will shed a bit of light on this and give it a bit more context, because I think you're both spot on, right? You're both spot on in terms of what you're talking about, and no one's wrong here. So let me introduce the how. So I've talked about the legacy creation being how I want to get where I want clients to go, and what I think everyone should be aiming toward, creating a conscious experience that people can remember you by, that you're proud of, and that is positive. It's having a positive impact on the people around you. So there's three things that I really recommend in terms of a focus area. The first is a strengths focus, right? To really look at focusing on what you're naturally talented in. And this is really where my experience at Gallup enabled me to hone this. And there are ways to understand your talents, and there are assessments you can take, psychometric assessments. But I think everyone intuitively knows what they're good at, right? We say, yeah, I'm good at certain things and I'm not so good at others. Well, traditional thinking would say, we want you to be well-rounded. So let's take school, for example. I'm good at maths, but I'm not good at English. So where do I spend most of my time doing homework? Maths or English? What would your answer be?
My answer would be you share time between both.
Yeah, you'd share time between both. And I'd say the majority of people would say, look, I spend a lot more time doing that, which I'm not good at, because I have to bring myself up to speed with the rest of the class. And unfortunately, that thinking still plagues us in the business world, at corporate. So if someone's not good at presenting, they'll be talked about in their performance review, or they'll be asked to improve their presentation skills and spend potentially the majority of their time trying to get better at that, rather than if they're really naturally good at Excel and spreadsheets and manipulating numbers, going down the path of investing in those talents and capabilities to maximize that potential. And look, some leaders do that, and they do it really well and maximize the talents of their team. But often it's not the case, and it's quite frustrating, actually. So strengths focus individually for yourself is really where we need to keep dragging our mind and stop focusing on our weaknesses. And something interesting, the Strengths Finder, or the Clifton Strengths Assessment, enables you to understand these different talents. And there's there's one in particular, and this is why I think it might help the conversation we were just having, Judith and Thomas, around, it's called restorative. And people that have high restorative talents, it's a personality trait, if you will, a talent, a natural way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. It's really fantastic in terms of solving problems, right? So people that have high restorative, they'll be energized by a problem. They'll see a problem, they'll want to fix it. They want to fix everything, right? And there's also another talent called positivity, which highly likely, Judith, that you might have positivity, just saying. And positivity and restorative, they're not good mates. They don't get along well, right? Because the restorative person might walk into the room when Judith is presenting an idea, and maybe it's a new project or something that she thinks is worthwhile investing in. And restorative would say, no, that's not going to work. No, there's a problem with that. No, this is where it's going to go wrong. No, it didn't work last time we tried that. Right. And it sounds negative. It sounds like shooting it down, destroying the idea, not making it possible. And it can feel really horrible if you're wanting to get something going. With someone who has high restorative, often I coach them around that because they get perceived as a bit of a narc or challenging to work with. I'll say, how about you frame everything before you state that there's a problem? And so this is where perspective comes in.
Into a positive statement.
Well, it's about saying
say the same thing, it's you just say it in a different way. So it doesn't appear to be a negative, and it isn't a negative, because you can turn a negative into a positive if you really think it through. Or that's what I think.
Well, can I just get in there?
Yes, please.
Yes, I agree with where you're coming from, Judith. Yes. And it depends on our way of living. We want positivity. We want to support. We have understanding. And that's the main three criteria of living as in my area of work. I work where I support staff. I employ staff. I train staff. And I'm a counselor as well. And I believe it's the way we behave that contributes. I get told at some stage in my workplace that, oh, you're very strict. You're so strong. I look at the culture that I'm living with at the moment, working with, and we got all different cultures. And I would say to them, if you rub your hands together, it gets warm. The way I speak and I talk, you may think that it's a bully or not nice. And the way you speak, I see that it's different. So we have to have this understanding. And the understanding is all about the positivity. And working through, we can combat, in a sense, to have a happy workplace. Now, as it is, I just wrote down a few things I thought it's about how I have been brought up with discrimination in my country. I looked at the positivity. I took the negativity as well. Discrimination was heavy in the early days in my country. And here I am today working with different cultures, and I put it down to understanding, having a positive thought, and supporting and acknowledging at the same time.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. That was a great contribution.
Thank you.
Great contribution. Yeah, so I think it is about playing to your strengths. It is about perspective. It is about reinforcing positivity and reflecting on that which is beneficial. And sometimes I can't see what I can't see, right? So true perspective is that overlap between how I see myself and how the rest of the world sees and experiences me. And so part of this idea is do the work on yourself first, self-discovery through self-disclosure, earn the right, and I say this carefully, but earn the right to ask for feedback. Because you might have heard of 360s or people saying, well, hang on, I need to know what's wrong and tell me. And if you go in a bit too hard for feedback, people are going to get rejected and they feel scared. They don't feel safe to do so. So part of that self-discovery through self-disclosure is actually breaking down your own walls and enabling people to see that it's actually available to them to provide you with feedback, that you're ready. And that can only happen, with a bit of hard work on yourself.
And it's okay to receive negativity and accept it. That's criticism, I believe, is the way to. Criticism is a gift. We learn from our critics, and we can improve. Yeah. So it comes down to all of what you just said, Joey. I want you on my team when I do this project.
Fantastic.
Joe, I have a quick question about the diagram in front of you, kind of building on that development cycle. Is there a particular part of that you should work on first? Do you kind of start by understanding your strength in yourself and then go somewhere else, and not to be too formulaic, of course?
No, look, so when I coach clients, I usually ask them, I said, so out of like, I talk them through the model and I say, so where would you like to start? And look, depending on where they're at, they may have done a lot of work on their strengths. And so they can articulate them really powerfully and coherently. And so they say, I'm really intrigued by purpose and what do you mean by alignment to purpose? And so they want to go there. And then other people are like, you know what? I know my problem is here. I don't know how to regulate my emotions. That's my problem. And if I be honest, the reason why I've built the model underpinned by emotional regulation. Now, if this is wrong, and what I mean by wrong, if people are experiencing me as angry or out of control or abusive, they don't see my strengths and they can't see my purpose. All they experience is emotion. And that obviously doesn't set us up for success. They're just experiencing the emotion that sits behind whatever it is that's triggered you. So especially in a leadership role, to be able to manage that emotional derailment or being hijacked emotionally is I think a critical skill.
And it's interesting.
And that comes in with perspective as well.
Yeah. There was a Harvard Business Review article a long time ago, which it really examined the idea of a lovable fool and a competent jerk. And they're basically saying, who's worse? Somebody's really good at their job, but like you said, emotional regulation, everybody hates it. Or do you love the guy who's like, not quite up to scratch, but geez, we just love him,
Well, that's it. And I think we've most likely in our working lives experienced toxic culture. And always, undoubtedly, unequivocally, somewhere in the senior leadership ladder, echelon, there'll be a competent jerk. And sometimes they're not even competent, if I be honest. And it's that. It usually comes with abuse, or I can't believe they spoke to me that way, or wow, what did I just witness? It's not necessarily gender specific, but due to the landslide of men being in more senior positions, it typically is a male. So I don't want to be controversial there, but that's generally what transpires. The men tend to be the ones that are perpetrators in that scenario. And so being able to manage emotions is, I'd say the toughest place for people to land. And also it's part of it's harder to see in yourself. Some people know that they're out of line, but to catch themselves in that moment is the difficulty, to actually arrest that behavior in the moment before it happens, and to know what precedes that emotional outburst or whatever it might be. That's the hardest part. And look, there's no easy answer to that, but awareness is where it comes in. Thomas?
Yes. I just wanted to ask a question about emotional regulation. And in looking at your website, I really love the idea of the process of seeking feedback from others. And I don't mean to steal your smoke here, but in terms of my own life, it is not an easy process for me emotionally to seek feedback from others, and it's even a bigger challenge to digest it and to alter my behavior and perception as a result thereof. Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I think it sits at the cornerstone of what I do with my clients. And like I referenced before, 360s is part of what I do, where I ask my clients to nominate key stakeholders. And the way I do it is, and depending on how many people I'm doing with it with simultaneously, but my preference is to actually get them to nominate those stakeholders and enroll them in the process of knowing why they're providing feedback. So this is not a tick and flick where you've got a survey link and you send it out to people and then you get a report and you look at it and you go, oh, yeah, I got a good score. Like, it has to be a process where they understand what they're doing. And so if you're talking to your director team or your manager or some peers, and you're saying, I really want to understand how you experience me, and I want you to be honest. This is going to help me. It's going to help me develop as a person, as a leader. It's going to help me in my personal life and my professional life. So please take your time, focus on this process, and be honest, please. So I then sit with those people that they've nominated and ask questions. I ask them about their strengths. How do they see them in terms of their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And what are some of the challenges that you experience when working with this person? I also ask them, where would you like to see them improve? And what are the biggest areas of improvement that you would imagine for this individual? And that could be improving on something they're already good at, or improving a deficit that you see and experience. I ask them what they most need from this person. So that could be something emotional. It could be friendship. It could be for them to listen. It could be many things. And I also ask whether or what their role is in this person's success. So what could they do to enable this person to be successful? And I think that's a really important component to recommend that individual sees themselves as part of the solution here. So it's not just about dumping feedback on somebody, saying, oh, here's what I could offer them. I could offer them a bit of support in this area, or I could help them with their communication skills, because I see that as an issue for them. But I'm good at that, so I could complement them. And then I ask them my I guess it's the haymaker question, and that really is, above all else, what do you most want this person to know? And that question is really the truth. It's the qualitative truth in that component. And generally, people are very positive in terms of what they share, very constructive, and it's powerful. It's very powerful in terms of what people experience as a result of that feedback. So that's the qualitative piece. I've also designed a quantitative questionnaire that actually mirrors the framework that I shared earlier. So if we go back to this model. So I've got questions that sit. There's 2 questions per element. So there's 12 questions for that questionnaire, and that one's a quantitative one. But one question that you may have come across in all of your experience dealing with, just as consumers buying products from companies, is I've adapted it from the Net Promoter Score, but I use what I call the Leadership Net Promoter Score. And rather than recommending a product or service to friends or family, I ask, how likely are you to speak positively about this person to your friends or family? And it's just a step and a hop away from the NPS. But if you think about what I asked you at the very start of this presentation, to imagine somebody's had a positive impact on your life, right? It wasn't hard to do that. Those people that are leaders in our world, we can't help but speak positively about them. It's in us. If you've got a great manager at work, you go home and you share that with your partner. You talk about that to whoever's willing to listen, unprompted. They maybe don't even ask you. You'll just say it. They're a good person, great leader, fantastic manager, love my company. Now, the opposite's also true. Right? If they're really not great, you can't help. Right? Maybe you'll try not to bring work home and contain yourself, and that's emotional regulation. But then someone says, you don't look good. Are you okay? and it unleashes Pandora's box, and, you know, all of the stuff comes out. So, you know, it's incredibly important for us to be able to recognize in ourselves that we're doing that for other people, and we can be that person that they're recalling, saying, this person was so powerful for me. They had such a positive impact on our lives. Now, if you are that person, you're going to feel great, but you're also going to enable that person to do better and feel great as well. So it's the gift that keeps on giving, and they'll obviously model their leadership behavior based on what they've experienced. And the opposite is true of competent jerks, right? The leaders, you know, they'll get results, so someone will follow them and do the same thing and treat people poorly. And, you know, unfortunately, it's very prevalent. That's why we've all experienced toxic cultures, because it's everywhere. So there's a reason why I'm busy, and while I'll always have a job, because there's plenty of competent jerks out there. But I wish I could change that equation and mix it up a little bit. But yeah, does that help in terms of the process? And
yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah,
the feedback.
Mhm.
But I know you're all wondering what were those 4 things, or what were those needs that followers had of leaders, to answer the question of that study that I introduced. 10,000 leaders were asked, imagine that person, and provide 3 responses. And they distilled all of that research, and they came up with 4 key themes, and probably already have a great idea of what they were, but anyone want to hazard a guess as to what they were?
Being supportive.
Supportive. Good.
Understanding.
Understanding. Good.
Yep. What is the other one that I do it with?
inspiring.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
Great.
And just listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listening.
Listening.
Yeah.
Well, none of you are wrong. And
Teaching.
these are just, sorry, what was that, Jeff?
Teaching.
Teaching. Yeah,
Teaching.
great. So the big reveal: trust, hope, stability, and compassion. So these were the 4 needs that followers stated they wanted from leaders. Not that they said, this is what I need, but they asked them to imagine that person that's had the most positive impact on their daily life. So if you want to have a positive impact on people, think about how you're communicating, whether it be through email or be through in person. And if you're instilling a sense of trust, hope, stability, or compassion, then you're on the right track. Now, if none of those things are available to you, or you're looking at your message and you're thinking, oh, no, not getting any of that, I'd rethink the message. I'd take it back and say, okay, maybe I've got some work to do here. And look, if it's just one of them that you're getting right in that message, that's okay too, because not every message can have all of these components. But choose one at the very least, I think, is the message there, and that'll get you a long way toward leading more powerfully. And at least if you haven't landed how you want people to experience you, and what are those 3 words that you want to be remembered by, you can steal from this chart, because at least this is based on some research, and you know that you're probably going to be on the money. But that's an exercise I'd really challenge you to take away. What 3 words best describe how you want to be experienced? And think about that deeply. Reserve the right to change them and alter them throughout your life and whenever, but start somewhere, because what you consciously work toward is what you'll consciously create. And even if you don't get it exactly right, you're going to be working toward getting that result, which, I'd like to think that we all want to have a positive impact on the world and want to be remembered positively for that impact too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's my website. There's where you can access my book if you are interested. As Thomas alluded to earlier, there is a free chapter download. So if you just want to get the first chapter, you can put your email address in there, and that's an easy way to get a taste if you don't want to buy it or you're not sure. So no pressure there. And yeah, it's something you can have a look at. So the other thing I would love for you to participate, and this is it is in my book, but to save you getting to that point, this on screen here, this is a QR code, which I'm sure you're all familiar with now since COVID. But if you get your phone out and scan this QR code, it'll bring up a survey that I've put together that enables you to give me some true perspective. It enables you to rate me and your experience of me. And by all means, you can take the questions that I've created and use them for yourself if you don't have time to read the book or whatever. But I would love you to take part in this experiment. And it's a rolling experiment. So I've had many people rate me using this same survey over the period that I've written the book, and asking for feedback, because I believe it's important for me to continually demonstrate my commitment to ongoing self-development. It is a relentless commitment, and it's not always easy, but it's one that I believe I need to keep reinforcing. So I would never ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So please go forth and give me some honest feedback. And as I like to say, true perspective.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely will. Thank you very much, Joey. I definitely will.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'd like to suggest something, Joe.
Yeah.
And this comes under the category of team effectiveness and cultural enhancement. As you're probably aware, we're all Rotarians, and we're out there trying to do service above self. It's and being in the cross, we're in the epicenter of need.
Absolutely.
And I look at all Rotarians as being as leaders. I mean, we're leading our club, we're setting an example for the community. And I would like to know whether or not you would be interested in putting together a Rotary seminar opportunity showcasing around exactly what you're talking about, because Rotary, being a volunteer organization, it in a sense, it sort of stresses leaders, including myself, to understand how to lead in a purely voluntary situation. It's a unique situation, and we as leaders, and all of us Rotarians have to be super conscious of exactly those emotional aspects that you talked about. So I would like to suggest, and Pete and I will get back to you on this, whether or not we could put together a leadership seminar, maybe an hour or two, and open it up to the whole Rotary community, because I think you've got a lot to say to us.
Yeah, I would love to. I think that would be miraculous. It'd be wonderful.
And open it up not just to club officers, but to anybody who's a Rotarian, because once again, my perspective is that we're all leaders, and the leadership of a club is you're just entrusted to it for a period of time before you pass that responsibility off to others. So we're all leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a club and a movement, you will be remembered, and your contribution will be experienced one way or another, but as an individual also. So no, I think that sounds like a great thing to do. I'd be honored.
And that way we get Sarah to focus in, and for maybe a couple hours, Sarah, and you and Joe get a chance to sort of learn from each other. Wouldn't that be fun?
I would love that. Joey, I found you very, very inspiring. Awesome. It's down my area as well. So I'm happy to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that.
And you're going to join Rotary, won't you?
I will, in my spare time.
Good on you.
Thanks, Joey. Is there any other questions from the team? Jeff? Yeah.
I've got mine slightly off the topic. Well, it's very much off the topic. Is
Okay.
Chandler and McLeod still using the Wadsworth scale?
I believe so. They re-verified it, or they did some work with it to change it. Oh God, now you're testing me. What do they call it? They renamed it, and so the Wadsworth, they purchased the rights to it. Then it had a few issues with it. Yeah, and then
I
renamed it.
I had some connection with Chandler and McLeod, and
Oh right.
The Wadsworth story is an interesting story, and it's amazing how they continue to hang on to it. But anyway,
So
look
what does that scale do then?
So a personality assessment.
Right.
So yeah, it had some clinical scales to it, which meant that it wasn't necessarily useful for a working population. And they were using it in the context back in the day, not when I was working there, but many years ago, using it in the context of job selection. And so that's predominantly what Chandler McLeod did. And it started as an organizational psychology firm. And predominantly it was assessment for selection, turned into more of a recruitment agency. And it got bought out by Recruit, the global, now global, but previously Japanese firm. And, Indeed.com is also affiliated with Recruit. But, Chandler McLeod, I think one of the great things that they did was they went vendor neutral. So they have access to every psychometric assessment available, and they utilize that really effectively. So yeah, the Wadsworth looks probably outdated, and the psychometric properties of it are no longer applicable, but they did revamp it and create a new tool, of which I've forgotten the name, but they sell it internally, and it's quite good. Yeah.
Well, you would know that it was developed for the American Army for the Second World War, and it was developed to eliminate people who were crazy. And
Pretty
they
much.
just flipped it. Yes.
Yeah, it was a clinical scale. Yeah, so
the crazies. Yes.
wasn't really applicable for the workplace context. No. Yeah.
Hey, Joe, here's an interesting feedback. Your Zoom perspective is very, very good. Your camera is good. Your lighting's good, and those AirPods are amazing. The voice is so clear. I've got a pair myself. Oh, okay. All right.
I'm cheating.
All right.
So
right.
This is to make sure I can hear you guys, and it's not feeding back into my mic. But yeah, the mic is
that's amazing. It's really good sound. Yeah.
It's an Audio Technica.
Yeah, good presentation. Really good presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We want to thank you on behalf of all of our club, Joe. Thank you so much for this evening. I want to tell you that normally we cut things off at 7 o'clock, but the interest has been so great this evening. I see nobody's signed out. So I want to thank you again for this marvelous opportunity and the marvelous experience. And before we leave, does anybody have any further thing that they would like to say? Any comments? Doesn't look like it.
Thanks, Joe. That's it.
Thank you, Joey.
And thank you all. No, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and it's a real honor and privilege to be able to present to you guys and share my thoughts. So thank you. Good conversation, good questions, good discussion. And thank you for staying on late.
Yeah. And Joe, if you want to hang on, you'll see our 4-way test to give you some idea of where we're coming from.
Yeah.
So Pete, if you would be, as usual, lead us in the 4-way test.
Yep. We just make that bigger for everybody.
Yeah.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Is
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
To Australia, Rotary and the Queen.
There you go.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. There's a lot of synergy with my tagline, which is why leading with the truth always wins. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
And And just a reminder, everybody, next week we're in person to say goodbye to Sunny and a chance to chat with each other face to face. So we'll see you all next week. And Joe, thanks again for showing up this evening and for giving us the benefit of your wonderful, wonderful knowledge and advice.
Thank
Been
you.
great.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Hi,
Bye.
Kate.
Pete, talk to me tomorrow.